1980 U.S. men's ice hockey team. They weren't supposed to win. And when the coach started passing over blue chip prospects for his team, people were like, why aren't you going for the most talented players? And he said, I'm not looking for the most talented players. I'm looking for the right players for my system. And so it's about fit. It's about what works for you. But what I would just share is like, and I write about this in my book, chapter 5, sponsors are the best leaders in the world. They are better than coaches. They are better than CEOs. They are better than executive coaches. They are the best leaders in the world because they are the only leaders that will say, I'm responsible for leading myself, and I'm going to show you how to lead yourself. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how I use a system that works for me, and I'm going to share my wins and my failures equally so that you can learn from my experience so that you can be more effective at leading yourself. Most leaders hide their weaknesses. Sponsors actually teach, inspire, and connect based off of their failures executing the quote unquote system. And so to me, when we take that approach, one of the things that you're describing is you create automatic leadership because you're taking responsibility for yourself and you're showing other people how they can too. And so to me, then you can expect that people will figure it out. People will own their side of the street. And then if you actually execute these principles, it's on them to ask for help. It's on them to ask for what they need as long as you create the safe environment and then you actually model it yourself. So I don't think it's a bad approach.
And
I'd say lean into it.
One of the team members, she writes a blog and she used to do it every day. And she's gotten so busy. She works at a treatment center as well. And she's just flying through the ranks there. She wears her heart on her sleeve, and she's not afraid to say, yeah, this is what happened to me. And she's killing it. And I just put a studio in my apartment, and she's just like, oh my God, I want that. So I guess this weekend she's getting like wood, and she's going to build herself a little studio in her basement. And I mean, it's that kind of stuff. Like, I didn't tell her, hey, Anna, you should, build a studio in your basement. She only does a podcast once a week, but she's that committed, and she wants it to be that great where she wants to feel comfortable and she wants to feel good about what she's doing. So I think in that aspect, that's wonderful. She's kind of doing what you said. She's saying, hey, that's what he's doing. I want to do that too. And there's other people that are like, I'd rather go mow yards today, which there's nothing wrong with that. Not everybody is a podcast guy. I did 20 years in radio. I kind of said that like it was prison, but I was in radio for 20 years. So this is something that I knew would help me because being on the radio is the only thing I put above drinking. And I knew like, hey, so if I do something that's going to that I put above drinking, and I make a commitment 4 times a week to do it, and I do it at night usually, so it means I got to spend the whole day sober, and I'm around sober people, talking to people, making community, like it just all kind of worked out. But again, I that's what I did for 20 years, so it was a good connection where other people that are involved, maybe that they don't have that background. Well, obviously they don't, but maybe that's not comfortable to them. Maybe they just want to be the side guy, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like you said many times, and everybody has said many times, it's your recovery. Everybody is different. Everybody's isn't going to be the same.
Well, but here's the one thing I would say to anyone in early recovery. One of the things that we'll tell newcomers where I come from is, in early recovery, depending on how early, your number one job is recovery. So if that means that you get a job that it doesn't maximize your potential or fully fulfill you, that's fine, because you can build an entire skyscraper of professional success on top of a solid foundation of recovery. But if you don't invest in that first, you'll be building everything on top of a foundation that's very shaky. And so I think that, giving people permission to not feel like they have to quote unquote strive professionally, especially in early recovery, is really important, because a lot of people come into recovery with a preconceived notion around what they want to do if they were able to get clean or sober and then be professional. But the truth is at least in my experience and the people I've sponsored and coached, I didn't know who I was when I got in recovery. I didn't actually know what I wanted. I had a bunch of things in my head that I thought were the truths. but I didn't know. I didn't know who I was. And I think the greatest path to discovering who you are is not by asking yourself, who am I? It's by finding out who you aren't. And that's the beauty of recovery, is as we use the awareness tools in recovery to go out in the day-to-day life, personally and professionally, whatever, to actually reflect on what's going on, say what was my part, what worked, all those sorts of things, sharing with other people, you start to determine and decide who you truly are. And for me, and I'll just speak for myself, it took me years to deconstruct who I thought I was, because I'd created a whole facade. I'd created a whole, I'm this, I'm that. Like I would try to push the limit on jokes and shock everybody. In my home group, we go to dinner after the meeting, and I would try to be the loudest, most shocking, raunchy joke teller, because that was the identity that kept me safe as an addict. And it helped me when I was high and all that kind of stuff. And about 5 years into recovery, I was like, wait a second, that's not actually me. It can be me every once in a while, but that's not actually me. I don't actually value this. And it took me a while to understand that. So I think that as we start to understand ourselves, I think that the truth about what we want to do professionally is something that is to be revised over time. And, your employee that's doing the podcast studio, that might be something that, starts a whole career. It could be something that then makes her believe, oh my God, I'm doing this, but what I really want to do is X. Mm-hmm. That's the beauty of this whole deal. It's like, it's a journey, and you get to discover who you are and what your purpose is on this earth. But as long as recovery is the focus, you can do anything.
Yep. I tell people that all the time, you can do anything as long as you're sober, as long as you're not back in addiction, because you can't do anything. I'm surprised I even had a job for 20 years. It took the whole liver shutting down thing to.
Yeah, dude, I was surprised when you just said that. But I think that's the interesting thing, is like, a bottom isn't always the way it looks in a movie. There are people that are able to have incredible personal bottoms, incredible emotional bottoms, but able to keep their job. And then there are other people that, become the movie version of the addict. But the problem is that, it's not really about how it looks and all that other stuff. It's about the bottom is whenever we stop digging.
Yeah. And sometimes we're forced to stop digging. Sometimes it takes the police to come along and take the shovel away. Like, no, you're going in here, man.
Yes.
And
a probation officer can be very helpful in putting down the shovel.
Yeah. When I just kept going through the cycle until I got an OWI, and I was in my apartment complex parking lot. I wasn't even in my car, but some dude was like, "You were driving," and I guess I was. And that's the scary part of it too. When I would go 2-3 months without drinking, and then think I could drink a half gallon like I used to, that's when the blackouts would happen, and that is very, very scary. And the cop told me, I told the cop he couldn't take me to jail, and then he took me to jail. But then they had the cop. They made up a whole story, because my mom and sister would call and do wellness checks on me. And so the cops they knew, where my apartment was. They beat on the window. They knew where my bed was, and they didn't know what to do, man. They kind of had enough. So when I told them he couldn't take me to jail, they took me. He's like, okay. So they wrote this little story up about how 2 different people saw me driving and this and that, and up and down the road, and I was stopping in the middle of the road, brushing my car off, and I had a T-shirt on, and I had pajama pants on. That's what I went to jail with anyway. And I didn't have my wallet, didn't have my vape. I had a whole half gallon at the house, so I don't even know what I was doing. I mean, there was no reason for me to leave. I don't know, and that's, again, the scary part of it all. But when I went to court, I was like, okay, well, first of all, they said they saw me driving from this street to this street. Those streets don't even connect. I was like, so let's just throw that out, and I want an all-black jury, and, I'm saying, just all this stupid stuff, and lawyer's looking at me like, okay, you done? You going to shut up now? And then he just says to me, how long's it been since you went a year without having a drink? I don't know. Why? He's like, just think about it. I don't know. Probably since I was 12. And he's like, okay, well, let's just go ahead with this then. This is what they're going to offer, and then we're going to say yes. And blah. I'm like, yeah, but all these facts. And he just kind of looked at me. He's like, this probably is going to save your life. I was like, all right, I thought you were my lawyer, but that's cool. All right, let's do the deal then. And it absolutely did save my life, and it put me exactly where I needed to be. I grew up in Southwest Michigan. I always wanted to live in Northern Michigan for some weird reason. And that's where I went to treatment. And then out of treatment, I had a chance to either go back home. My apartment had been cleaned out, so I could either live with my mother. And that's not a bad thing. My mother loves me, but there's some codependency issues that I had there with, well, if I don't have the money, I can always ask her. And, she's gone for the weekend. She won't know I'm drunk, even though one weekend turns into never stopping. So
right.
I could have either done that, or I could have went and lived with 20 dudes in a sober living house, which I did not want to do, which raised the flag and said, you know what? That's what you're going to do, Corey. You flunked out of college again. They're not going to take you back, because when I was in jail, it was when all the exams are going on, so I failed them all, so I can't go back to school. I don't have a job. There was nothing for me to do. So it was like, well, here's my chance. I don't want to go live with a bunch of dudes, but it was one of the best things that's happened to me. And just by going to a sober living house doesn't mean that you're never going to use drugs or never going to drink again, never going to make bad decisions. It doesn't mean that at all, but it gives you a hell of a better chance. And to learn how to do things the right way. Yesterday I was cleaning the bathroom for my girlfriend. She had to go, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to clean the bathrooms. And I'm cleaning it, and I'm thinking about the guy who owns the sober living house that I went to, and how I used to clean the bathroom for 20 dudes, and this was a hell of a lot better bathroom to clean for a gorgeous woman. I will do that every day of the week if she wants me to, not a bad trade-off. And I was just thinking,
that's a very good trade-off.
It's like these little things. It was almost like a Mr. Miyagi moment, wax on, wax off, like, oh, he's teaching me this, I almost wanted to text him and go, man, thanks for making me clean those bathrooms, and it's those little moments where you can just kind of smile and look back and think, man, 2 years ago it was way different, and I love life now. Like I said earlier, I have way too much to live for to even, think about, having a drink would be fun. No, it wouldn't. The buzz isn't even that good, and it just would destroy everything. And this sense of pride, and I don't have a Mercedes-Benz. I don't have a big house on the lake. I can focus on the things I don't have, but that's kind of silly. I'd rather focus on the things that I do have. I have a roof over my head. I have a gorgeous girlfriend. And I want to start a family. I've never been married. Don't have any kids. Like, these are things that I have every opportunity to accomplish now. And I mean, God is good, man. He really is. And whatever wants to, whatever you want to call them, I think it's very important to be spiritual and to realize that there's higher stuff going on, because there's so many things that could have happened, and that, some people, it does happen too. I'm blessed. Not everybody does have a family that would support an addict, or somebody in recovery, but I pray for them, and I hope they'll find their own way. But as far as I go, I am blessed. I truly am. And it's kind of like, you might have heard this, but I can't remember the golfer that said it. He talked about how when you go up to, and I don't know if you golf much, but you go up to a hole, and there's a water hazard, and there's trees over there, and you go up there and you're thinking, okay, I don't want to hit it in the water. I got to make sure I hit it over here, because I don't want to hit it in the water, and I don't want to hit it in them trees. Well, instead of focusing on don't want to hit it in the water and don't want to hit it in them trees, how about you focus, okay, I'm going to land it right on that green over there, and I can't remember what golfer it was, but he said that when he started changing his golf game around to where he wasn't thinking about where he didn't want to hit the ball, he was thinking about where he did. And did he hit it there every time? No. But more times than not, he found himself hitting it where he wanted to, and as opposed to, going the opposite way. And I think that's a huge mental hurdle. And I think it's harder than what it sounds like. Oh, that's simple enough. I'll just focus on things I want. Because you have to pull yourself back and catch yourself when you're thinking about, oh man, my computer didn't come yesterday, and now I can't do this and can't do that. Well, what can I do? I can clean the bathroom. I can make dinner. I can do the floor. You change it, and
that's what you're talking about right there, is like surrender the outcome. You're moving from can't control to can control, and you're 100% right that like where we focus our mental energy is what we attract and what we create. And so one of the reasons I think people in recovery have a tendency to be really successful is they have a disproportionate amount of energy that they're able to shift over to focusing on the things that they do want, instead of like completely obsessing over the things that aren't going their way or the things that they